Hello and welcome to broadcast 3 of the Festival of Politics with the Scottish Youth Film Foundation live from the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh. We have already had 2 broadcasts covering the first 2 days of the festival, so if you haven't checked those out, please do so on the Scottish Youth Film Foundation YouTube channel.
Today saw the opening of the festival's Climate Cafe, with several local schools attending and panels relating to climate change. On tonight's show, we'll be covering some of the most pressing environmental issues today, including the green energy revolution and the next generation of young activists.
But first, yesterday I got a chance to speak with Robert Moran, who is a partner at the Brunswick Group and an expert in communication strategy. And we followed on his panel on the US presidential election, so let's take a look at how it went. To go straight to the point about one of candidates, Kamala Harris. So we all witnessed that it's been a great support for her from donators, and she managed to raise an amazing amount of money. What drove those 2/3 of Harris' recent fundraising haul to come with the first-time donors?
Sure, I think there's. I think with Biden as the potential nominee, there wasn't as much excitement, and with the switch to Harris, I think there was a lot more excitement on the Democratic side, and that boosted campaign donations. With that said, money in U.S. politics is a little less decisive than it used to be, because of the decline of broadcast advertising and broadcast television and the rise of digital, et cetera. It's not the same as it used to be. But
digital still demands really...
Yes, so her campaign, both campaigns are going to spend a lot more on digital than the old sort of broadcast 30-second spots,
And about turnout, that's about my next question. So, as we all know, Kamala is the first woman of color to top the major party's ticket. Is it going to be a huge impact on voter turnout, and particularly among the minorities and minority groups?
Sure. So I think relative to Biden, she will generate marginally higher youth turnout and have a better, marginally higher vote share of youth, which should help her relative to what Biden would have achieved. I think there's an open question as to what percentage she will receive among the Black community, but I would estimate that it would have to be at least around Biden's 2020 percentages, which should be good for her.
And the last question I have for you, what do you think could be the biggest vulnerability for each of the candidates currently?
That's a very good question. So I think in terms of, first for Trump, the vulnerability would be him not focusing on the economy, but like bouncing around in his focus, and not like normally the better candidate is focused on the thing they need to communicate to win. So if he was planning to run against Biden, he's not running against Biden. He needs to win on the economy to win the election. So if he's not talking about the economy and inflation and fixing these problems, he's not winning, in my opinion. The Harris campaign, they need to define her and explain who she is in a favorable way, knowing that the Trump campaign will also try to define her to the left of the median swing voter in one of those swing states. And so they need to define her favorably, but very quickly. So I think her speech will be one of the most important political speeches early in the 21st century that we have, because she essentially needs to use the speech to tell people who she is, where she's been, and where she wants to take them, right? And that's the speech. I want you to get in the car with me, and I need to tell you where we're going to go in the car. And so she needs to tell people that and explain who she is. The media will cut pieces of her speech and then play it on television for quite a bit. So that speech is very, very important. I think I think a large number of Americans will tune in to watch her speech because they legitimately don't know much about her and want to know who she is.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are here at the Parliament's Hall asking people about their opinion on the main strengths and weaknesses of each candidate for US election.
Donald Trump, I would find it quite difficult to offer any strengths. He's obviously got a substantial support from Republicans and particularly the Christian right and other groups in the States. My personal view, he's dishonest. He plays people, but that may be seen as a strength in many quarters. Kamala Harris, we've not seen a great deal of her in the last 4 years. She's been kept very much in the dark for whatever reason.
There'll be so much damage happen if Donald Trump enters politics again.
He's a criminal, I have to say, so not a strong leader in my opinion. Camilla, I don't really know very much about her, to be honest. She's been around for quite a long time. She just seems to be quite on the back benches.
For me, I don't want to see Trump return.
That was Juliana's exclusive interview with Washington, D.C. analyst Robert Moran. Juliana. Robert Moran is a senior commentator in the world of politics and a frequent writer for the Huffington Post. How was it talking to him?
To be honest, it was really interesting to talk to him because he's such an expert in his field, and you can get so many insights which you are not aware of before. And to be honest, this topic is now on the top pages of all the news, so it's relevant and insightful, I would say.
That's a good combination of things. Now, to both of you, at the same time as the Festival of Politics is in Edinburgh, the Democratic National Convention is going on in the USA. Have you been keeping up with the convention, with US politics, and what are your thoughts on the matter?
Sure. I mean, today, if I'm not mistaken, the last day of the convention, and it's been really full of the events, new statements, new personalities there, and today is Kamala Harris' presentation and a big speech, so it was interesting to hear from her.
And you?
Well, I have managed to keep up with some aspects of it. I watched a very empowering speech by Hillary Clinton the other day, talking where she reiterated that we need to keep going. I am a proud Democrat in that respect. But no, I feel optimistic. Tim Walz seems like someone who has his head screwed on. I like his background. He's a retired teacher. I think he really gets the public, and he sounds like a genuine human being with genuine hobbies. He, in his spare time, restores his international scout with his son, and obviously there's 20 years of monitoring the lunchroom behind him. I just feel really positive about the fact that there are people like him in US politics.
Did either of you manage to catch Lil Jon's explosive intro?
Who's Lil Jon?
Moving on. As AI and social media become key tools in the US presidential campaign, race, and in general, the need for digital literacy is becoming more important than ever. But what is digital literacy? Ahead of today's panel on the topic, our team member Sophie had this to say.
Information literacy and critical thinking, two terms that are becoming increasingly commonplace. But what do they mean and why are they important? Information literacy is defined as the ability to find, evaluate, use and communicate information in all its forms. Critical thinking is the objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment. In the digital age, being able to distinguish fact from fiction and apply the information in day-to-day situations is an expectation and a necessity. So how are young people being taught these skills and virtues? A study based on Glasgow University and common feeder schools in Ayrshire found that information literacy was mostly taught between the ages of 12 and 13, but not reiterated after that. When the students ended up in university, they had poor and limited levels of information literacy. Other research suggests that this is a nationwide trend. Suggested reasons for lack of systematic approaches to information literacy include that teachers don't feel it is limited to one specific subject. They think it is a cross-curriculum skills-building exercise. So how can this be fixed? There are several core concepts that must be understood. First, authority is constructed and contextual, meaning that just because something is written down does not mean it's true nor reliable. Second, information has many types of value, and many factors influence the creation, access, and distribution of information. 3, that research is rarely straightforward, and sometimes the answer will be open-ended and ambiguous. Context and general knowledge are also key to interpreting information, so encouraging students to maintain an awareness of the world around them will allow them to sift through content confidently. I'm here with Rab, a member of our team. Can you tell us a little about college and what that was like for you during COVID?
It was very, very difficult. My first year at the University of Edinburgh was right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, so I didn't actually attend any of my lectures at university, not by choice, but because they weren't on until my third year of university, because the first 2 years were completely online for me. So it was a very claustrophobic time, I think, locked in your university dorm.
No, I can imagine. So were you ever taught information literacy and critical thinking, either in primary school, high school, or at college?
I think we were taught a wee bit. The thing is that the internet has changed so fast and so rapidly. I mean, seeing now with the onset of AI, which has completely changed the landscape that you need to be literate of. Certainly whatever we were taught in high school probably isn't relevant now.
Do you notice a difference with how people engage with reading information versus watching it in YouTube videos or TikTok?
Actually, I'd say with reading, it has a more powerful effect. I mean, potentially, just with myself. When it comes to watching videos, I think it's usually easier to tell if it's been doctored and if it's fake. And you're able to kind of tune out the sound. But if you look at the comment sections on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, is a bad one at the moment. They're filled with messages and texts from non-existent people and from bots. And those simple sentences and words can really stick in your mind.
UNESCO declared information literacy a human right in 2003. It should be introduced at an earlier age and reinforced consistently throughout each stage of education. That and critical thinking remain key to navigating online spaces.
Thank you, Sophie, for such a fantastic report on digital literacy. And that is a really fascinating topic. Did you find anything new while researching your short film?
Yeah, so when I was researching this morning, I found the study from Glasgow Uni and Ayrshire that I mentioned. So I read through all of that, which I probably didn't need to, but it was actually really interesting. And it basically just documented where digital literacy was being taught and then where it kind of tailored off and where people had to supplement that with their own self-initiated development.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. And there's a strong evidence of generational divide when it comes to digital literacy. And as members of Gen Z, have you noticed this in your personal lives and have you experienced it?
Kind of. You can definitely see where it's coming from. People take things a lot more at face value now. But maybe it's just my personal circle. But I think that people do still have an understanding of where to look for information and how to parse the truth from the lie.
I used to volunteer at a digital literacy sort of training workshop to help elderly members of the community up in Inverness learn how to use computers, and I was 16 at the time, and it really struck me just the difference that exists when you grow up with a technology versus when it's something that's introduced towards the end of your life. I'd say something that worries me in terms of a generational divide with technology is that a lot of older members of the community really struggle with loneliness as they get older, and it actually drives them more towards social media. and sites like Facebook and stuff. And that's where you start seeing negative values really permeate the community, I suppose.
That's true. And also, in preparation for the Festival of Politics, each of us was tasked with making a film on an issue local to us. And Sophie and Rob, you made a film about electricity pylons in the Scottish Highlands. So let's watch that now.
Easter Ross, a gentle region of the world-famous Scottish Highlands. Here, the hills are lower, the farms wider, and the small villages and towns along the east coast more numerous. Compared to the Central Belt or nearby Inverness, life here is quiet until now. A massive pylon scheme is underway, connecting the tiny settlement of Spittal in Caithness with the village of Beauly, over 80 miles down the coast. However, while connecting energy to consumers, the pylons are dividing local communities. The anger is felt no stronger than in villages neighbouring the scheme, including Beauly, Kiltarlity and SYFF. SSEN, the company behind the scheme and the north of Scotland's reigning energy giant, has plans for several substantial substations in Fenelon. In response, several communities have protested, claiming that it's unnecessary, environmentally destructive and not needed for the economy. But why here and why now?
This isn't the first power line to arrive in Beauly. The line was completed after 14 years of struggle with local campaigners. However, while the Beauly-Denny line runs through a national park, the Beauly-Spittal line won't, and for that reason, the application is going through much faster in SSEN's favour.
It's not just the Beauly-Spittal pylon line campaigners are worried about. Already, plans are being outlined for a similar pylon line running from here to the west coast. Applications for new private wind farms are pouring in, ready for when the pylon scheme goes live. Currently unexplored, offshore wind is expected to be the next major market.
Neither SSEN nor the Highland Council were available for comment. However, we spoke to Dan Bailey, who lives in SYFF.
There is an irrefutable need to decarbonise the power grid in the UK, and that will mean upgrading the grid system as well as building wind farms in certain places. So there may be a need for a pylon line, or a power line, should we say, from the north of Scotland down to the south where the census of the population are, where the consumers are. But the case for an overhead pylon line through Caithness, Sutherland, Easter Ross, hasn't been made convincingly. It could be an underground high voltage direct current line. It could be subsea cables. While we sort of welcome the idea that we have to mitigate climate change, and we would like to do our bit to help with that, we don't see why we should be sacrificed for no local benefit.
Unfortunately for anti-pylon campaign groups like Communities Before Power Companies, protesting the scheme is not that easy. The Highland Council is in charge of local planning permission and SSEN's application. However, they're under pressure from both the Scottish and UK governments to improve the national grid and get more renewable energy out from the Highlands. Moreover, while the Scottish Government can intervene in planning, it's the UK Government in London that's in charge of energy policy, which private companies get subsidised, the price of energy for consumers, and whether companies are under any obligations to provide for local communities. SSEN, as a private corporation, wants to pick the most profitable route, and is obliged by state energy regulator Ofgem to pick the cheapest option for consumers, that being pylons. With so many players, it's hard to know where pressure should be applied. Since energy in the UK was privatised in 1989, grid infrastructure has stagnated, resulting in millions being poured into constraint payments. That's money given to private generating companies when the national grid physically can't take their electricity. The new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, wants the entire UK powered by clean energy by 2030. However, to do so will require vast new infrastructure, much of which will be in the Scottish Highlands.
Ultimately, this is a debate about human priorities in the environment, how its resources should be used, and by whom. The struggle between local living, national desires and global needs continues in the quiet villages of the Scottish Highlands.
That was myself and Sophie's short video on the new SSEN pylon scheme planned for Easter Ross in the Highlands. As we talked about in that video, there's a strong tension between the global need to reduce CO2 levels and local desires to protect landscapes and livelihoods. Growing up, did either of you witness any similar tensions between the energy sector or environmental regulations in your local communities, or was it quite a harmonious environment that you grew up in?
I wouldn't have called it harmonious. I mean, but I think I was too young to have recalled issues like that in my community. And obviously, when I moved up here, I was a little bit older. And one of the biggest conflicts of my living memory, you are about to see in my individual film in a few minutes.
We can't wait to see that. Yourself, Sal? Anything?
Yeah, so I grew up I spent quite a few years growing up in the northeast of the US, which is kind of known for its logging industry. And so there's kind of some tension there between the loggers and the environmentalists and whatnot. But there was this one scheme quite similar to the one you're facing in the Highlands, in which a pylon highway was being designed to cut through what's called the Great Northern Wood. And there was a lot of protest about it. I think it ultimately passed, but so it goes.
Yeah, unfortunately, protests aren't always successful, but...
Unfortunately not.
No. And a second question for the both of you. The climate crisis was a huge part of our generation's upbringing and our understanding of the world. I remember figures like Greta Thunberg and groups like Extinction Rebellion playing a big part in my teenage rebellious phase. But what were your personal experiences? Were you educated about the climate in school? Were you a member of any environmental groups?
We were actually. A major part of my education was surrounding the climate. I took geography,
right,
and we did a whole climate change module where we looked at the different ways communities across the world have suffered from the climate crisis and solutions that have been posed to alleviate some of those issues. Although I also once quite memorably, I was a member of a debating club at school, which...
I can't believe that.
which has led to me being actually running a society at my university.
Oh, there you go.
Strathclyde Debate Society, look them up. Anyway, so I was actually forced to debate against Greta Thunberg campaigning, and it was incredibly difficult.
I can believe that.
Obviously, the views that I had to represent in that debate are not views that mirror my own, so it was particularly hard and difficult to get into that mindset.
That's really interesting, though. And yourself, Mohammed?
Yeah, so growing up, we did my schooling had a woodland focus when I was in America, so we'd often go into the local forests to look at fish populations that we were tracking over a few years. Or soil compositions, and even just in the few years I did that, you could notice a trend away from baseline that I was taught was due to some very complex reason regarding the climate changing. But I also, where I grew up, was its winters are notoriously harsh, or were notoriously harsh, and even in my lifetime they seem to have been decimated from months-long, dark, cold, blizzard conditions for many months to maybe 1 or 2 with light snows here and there.
So it looks like Maine's going to be the next tropical paradise.
Looks like it.
Scotland as well, by the sounds of it, so book your tickets now. Today, the Scottish Parliament was honoured to host the Climate Cafe, a pop-up safe space to chat about climate change for people worried about it. And Santi, you got the chance to speak with attendees, so let's take a look at that.
Today is a monumentous day at the Scottish Parliament as the Climate Cafe have announced the first ever outlet in a parliamentary building, and it's happening right here in Scotland. We are here with 2 of the young people that have been pivotal in this initiative to talk to them more about their experiences getting here and how they feel about the future. So I'm here with Ruby and Doogie, the first ever Climate Cafe in a parliamentary building. You must feel really chuffed about that.
Yeah, definitely. It's been lots of work to get to places like this and to get all over the globe to get people thinking about climate change.
Of course, you started campaigning at a very early age, both of you. So this has been quite a major journey. This has been a life journey of a lifetime, almost, in a way. What do you say you feel more positive about the future of our climate now than you did when you were younger?
Well, it depends, because there's lots of good new laws that are coming into place which are helping, but there's also like just differences that need to be changed still. So I guess in a way it's better, but it needs to be better than what it is.
Of course. Would you share those sentiments at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I also definitely feel more positive after the Friday for Future movement started by Greta Thunberg. Ruby and Dougie were the two who started it first here at Scottish Parliament. I think when we saw the 20,000 people all here outside Parliament, it really was impactful and really meant a lot, especially I'm sure to you, Dougie, as well.
Yeah.
What are climate cafes? What do they aim to achieve?
So climate cafes are basically a space for people to come together and to talk about climate, whatever their view is. So they can come, they can have a cup of tea, coffee, juice, biscuits and maybe cake if they're lucky, and they can just have a nice safe space to talk about it. So different views, great, everyone is welcome, and just it started like when we realised in our community that we wanted to bring people together because not many people were talking about climate. So it's now gone from a small rural community in Scotland to a global movement.
Yeah, so like what Dougie said, it's really just a safe, organic space to start the conversation about climate, to get people talking, to hear what their views are, to hear what they're doing in their communities and what more they feel communities could be doing. There's no pressure on it, it just gives the space for the conversation to move in any direction that it wants to go. Just a cup of tea, very relaxed, cup of tea, biscuit, chat about the climate and what people feel needs to be done.
Oh, that's perfect.
Completely community-led as well.
That sounds absolutely amazing. Of course, you were both trained by Al Gore, a major American politician and a key advocate for the environment. What was that like, meeting such a pivotal figure?
It was just amazing to hear his ideas and just to have someone who knows so much about politics and climate change, just to learn from them and just to get information that you might not already know. So definitely recommend the training.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I think it felt very surreal, very exciting to be there. I think it's all quite overwhelming at the time and it takes a while to sit in, but it's very exciting to learn. It's really nice as a young person as well. I don't know if you felt the same, Dougie, but to just be within that environment with lots of different age groups and be treated like an adult and to learn the science and things that you need to know about climate change.
How can people get involved in the Climate Cafe?
So people can just go to our website. So if they go to www.climate.cafe, you can get all the information. And if you would like to start up your own as well, please just contact our director and team and they will get you sorted. So it's completely accessible to everyone. It could be in a theatre, a community campus, or a library, or a workspace, or anything. So just get in touch and we'll help you out, or just go along to your local one.
Yeah.
Ruby, Dougie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that was a breath of fresh air. I know it can be really easy to take a negative outlook on the climate, but as we've seen today, there are good stories. So with that in mind, here's a pretty big question. How are you feeling about the climate crisis?
I wrote the cue card and even I don't have an answer to that. I think I'm actually feeling more positive as I get older. I think as a teenager, it was very easy to fall into quite a negative mindset and really focus on, the stories of gloom and doom. But that's not really good for getting things done. And there's going to be damage regardless of what we do now, just from years of pollution and ignorance regarding the climate, but unless we act and unless we have a positive attitude and look to good stories like the one you just covered, nothing will be achieved.
Yeah.
I think I echo many of Rab's sentiments when it comes to that. I had the opportunity to sit on the Not the End of the World panel today and met some really interesting people. That film will hopefully be going up tomorrow, fingers crossed. However, no, it's... I am concerned about the climate crisis. I am wondering if quite regularly there is a conflict between profit margins and sustainability, and I am concerned about that. But I do listen to what comes to the things that experts and professionals in that field talk about, and I do feel a level of reassurance. So yeah, that's I think where I stand at the moment.
Yeah, well, up next we have another short film made in preparation for this week by Santi on 15-minute neighbourhoods in Shawlands, Glasgow.
This is Shawlands, a neighbourhood in Glasgow's south side. Thanks to its localised range of shops, pharmacies and cafes, it's a perfect example of a 15-minute neighbourhood. Of course, many of the shops are concentrated in the building behind me, Shawlands Arcade, which is due to be knocked down at the end of this year in favour of a mixed development with 300 build-to-rent flats. The question is Scotland developing the homes that we need, or is it favouring developers and big profit? And will Shawlands as a neighbourhood and its 15-minute walkability status be tainted? Politicians close to the issue have also expressed their concern.
An overwhelming majority of people in this area want to see the site redeveloped, and I want to see the site redeveloped, and I'd support the idea of creating more of a 15-minute neighbourhood. But the reality is the way the developer approached it was very much giving the community a fait accompli. We are meant to have a planning system that gives local communities a voice, but it was very much a tick box exercise. So local people had lots of concerns about affordability of housing, about the additional pressure that 600 flats would put on some of the services that exist in the area, as well as some of the pressures around parking and traffic and all those sorts of things. So there's real, I guess, concerns about what that development would mean, and it was really the fact that the developer didn't, in my view, and I think in the view of very many people, didn't properly engage with local people.
I think there's real concerns, and that's why I'm really pleased that when the Labour Party announced during the manifesto launch that we wouldn't just build houses, we'll build towns, and we'd make sure that people had access to all of the amenities that they need. All of these things need to be considered. That's why the 15-minute neighbourhood's an important approach, because it answers some of those questions around transport. I think the infrastructure in Glasgow in particular to support people moving around the city and moving around the region is pretty poor. I think we need to do much, much more with our public transport, including making it a lot more affordable, frequent, accessible and available.
Despite this opposition, Phase 1 of construction has been approved. With nothing confirmed yet about what shops or services will be contained within the new complex, the question of whether this new arcade satisfies the community's needs still hangs in the balance.
That was Sandy's short film on the struggle to save Shawlands' 15-minute neighbourhood. So Sandy, as a resident of Southside Glasgow and a student at Strathclyde, how have you noticed the city changing since you've lived there?
Well, quite a bit. I mean, closer to home, there have been a variety of different shops move into the area, move out of the area. The pub I worked at for about 4 weeks is long gone. Probably for the best. And in Glasgow, a lot has changed. I mean, obviously, a big thing that happened was the launch of the LEZ scheme in the city centre. I actually made a film about that for my uni degree as well, looking at why classic cars were exempt, and the reason is because there's such a small number of them. So, top tip, if you want to avoid the LEZ and can't afford an electric car, get a classic one. There you go. But yeah, otherwise, it's still the Glasgow I know and love, and I love it, so...
And Have you seen much active resistance among the community in Shawlands against this development? Like, what's the state of it now?
Well, actually, I was one of the people who resisted against it. I, amongst many people, were concerned about there was no guarantee that the shops within the development would be able to stay. There wasn't any rent protection. The other issue was that public transport in the area is already overwhelmed. We're still on lockdown levels of train services, so we're talking 1 or 2 trains an hour on some days, and bus services are frequently delayed and frequently overpacked with commuters. I don't feel that 300 build-to-rent 1-bedroom flats will particularly help the situation, largely because we have these services and there's no guarantee that they're going to be increased or run more frequently. So yeah, and I was very concerned, and I want to say there were 180 objections to the development as well as a high number of signatures on a petition against it, including my own.
Well, it's great that you get to make a film about something you feel so strongly about, and we obviously wouldn't be able to make these films without sponsors like the Energy Saving Trust Foundation, and they are part of the Tackling the Climate emergency, and they have a big involvement with the Scottish Youth Film Foundation, and I got to interview them earlier today to discuss the important work that they do. So today we're here with Energy Saving Trust. Why don't you just tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do at the foundation?
Hi, my name's Lindsay. I'm Head of Foundation at the Energy Saving Trust, and we are a grant-making charity that wants to provide opportunities and support for young people to be able to take action on the climate emergency.
Hi, my name's Jim. I'm the chair of the Energy Saving Trust Foundation, so I work with a great team of people who support Lindsay. And our collective ambition, the reason we all do this, is to get as much money as we can to support young people who are taking climate action right now and tackling the climate emergency across the country.
So obviously you're all about tackling the climate emergency. What would you say about the importance of young people being able to understand and react to the climate emergency?
So a lot of the work that we wanted to focus on was because we know that young people care a lot about the climate emergency and want to take action. And what we wanted to do was provide those opportunities for them to do that. So to remove barriers, provide support, fund organisations like the Scottish Youth Film Foundation that can support them to do that. And we felt that that was really important.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think there's sometimes an assumption that because younger people tend to be aware of the challenge of climate change, that they have the means and the tools to act. And actually that's not true. There are lots of barriers to young people's voice being heard. There's lots of political barriers, there's lots of financial and economic barriers. And so we wanted to do something as a foundation to help try and reduce those barriers and let the voice of young people be more powerful in the argument.
So obviously you work a lot with young people. What kind of projects do you usually fund?
So we fund, at the moment, we've got 21 projects across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and they're a real mix. So we have some projects that are inspiring and educating young people and children, so that might be quite younger children in primary school age, and educating them about the climate emergency to inspire them to be able to take action. Then we have some other projects that are further along the scale where young people are already educated and knowledgeable. What they need is the resources to be able to take action. And they might be using the means of film and production. They might be using craft, art, music to be able to tell that story and to be able to take the action that they want to take.
I think what we're trying to do is to fund kind of projects that are about skills, awareness, advocacy, journalism. And the idea really, what we have in our mind's eye is we're in the Scottish Parliament today. So a day will come where we hope that this Parliament is filled with MSPs who are climate aware and want to take action, and that out there in Scotland and in the UK around them, they'll find thousands and millions of people in society, workers, educators, citizens, who will have the skills and confidence to support them. So that's we're trying to seed that connection between citizens and politicians and decision makers, so that we can take more action and more rapidly.
So how hopeful are you that we can tackle the climate emergency, and what message would you give to young people who are hoping to tackle this emergency?
So I'd say we're very hopeful, and that's, our strategy is all about hope and positivity and encouragement for young people. And I think, we want to encourage others to be able to support more of this work, because there isn't enough funding to support young people to be able to take action. And you are the generation that will be affected by the impact of the climate change the longest. So we want to make sure that there is as much funding and support as possible to be able to do that. But we are a hopeful organisation and inspired by meeting young people like yourselves doing great stuff.
Massively optimistic that we can tackle this problem. It will require lots more organisations like ours, lots more businesses and corporations to put their money where their mouth is and invest in supporting younger people. So there needs to be a real shift and a change in the way that the whole of the UK funds and engages with this problem seriously now. But when I look at younger people that I work with in my day job or I meet in the foundation, there's no question at all that the capacity is there and the talent is there in the UK to solve the problem.
Thank you for your time. That's all the questions I've got today.
I must say it was a wonderful day, and I really enjoyed speaking to all the visitors at the Parliament, as well as to our sponsors about the important work the Scottish Youth Film Foundation does. Mohammed, could you give us a quick look at tomorrow's programme and tomorrow's events?
Certainly, Juliana. Coming up tomorrow's show, our reporter Santi will be covering the world of AI and deepfake politics. Fingers crossed. Rab will be raising the curtain on St Andrew's Day in an exclusive interview with Professor David Brun. And finally, Sophie will look at the panel on incel politics and chat to doctors Claire Duffy and Sophie King-Hill.
From everyone here at the Scottish Youth Film Foundation, thank you very much for watching, and thank you to our sponsors, Energy Saving Trust Foundation, for making this happen. We'll see you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. for the final show. Bye.